The town of Black Hollow had been abandoned for nearly 50 years, yet no one dared step into its ruins. Not because of the rot or the collapsed buildings, but because of him, the thing that still moved through the streets long after the last screams had faded. The legend varied depending on who told it. Some claimed he was once a man, a butcher who went mad and slaughtered his entire family, wearing their skins like trophies. Others said he was never human at all, just something that had always lurked in the woods, feeding on anyone unlucky enough to cross its path. Whatever the truth, Black Hollow was a graveyard, and those who entered never came out whole. Jonah and his friends didn't believe in ghost stories. "There's no such thing as the Harvest Man," he scoffed as they approached the outskirts of Black Hollow. The air smelled of decay, and the buildings, covered in vines and mold, loomed like silent watchers. Lena, the only one with a bit of sense, hesitated. "We shouldn't be here. Scared," Jonah teased. "No," she lied, glancing around uneasily. A rustling in the distance cut her off. A branch cracked, then silence. A long, unbearable silence. Then a wet plop. They turned toward the sound. Something was hanging from a nearby tree, swaying gently in the wind. A deer? No, it was too human. Its arms were gone. Its torso split open like a burst fruit. The stench hit them like a sledgehammer, making the group gag. Then it moved, not from the wind. Something was behind it. The corpse jerked violently before being ripped in half, spilling blackened intestines onto the ground. From behind the carcass, a towering figure unfolded itself. A man, or what used to be one. His skin was a patchwork of stitched-together flesh, his face hidden beneath a mask of dried human skin, its mouth sewn into a grotesque grin. His fingers were too long, sharpened into jagged, yellowed claws. His chest heaved with each breath, his ribcage moving beneath stretched and stolen skin. Then he spoke, or rather, something spoke through him. A voice that sounded like it had been torn from the throats of 100 dying men. Flesh, and then he lunged. The slaughter. Jonah barely had time to scream before the thing tore his jaw clean off. Blood sprayed in a thick, pulsing arc as Jonah's body convulsed, his tongue flapping uselessly in his gaping throat. The Harvest Man crushed his skull like an egg, bone shards embedding themselves into the dirt. Lena ran. She didn't care where. She just ran. Behind her, she heard her friends dying. David shrieked as the monster grabbed him by the spine and peeled him open, his ribs snapping like brittle twigs, his intestines unraveled, roped around a tree as if the thing was decorating for some twisted festival. Sam made it a few steps before something lashed out from the darkness. A rusty meat hook buried itself in his throat, dragging him backward. He clawed at the earth, nails peeling away, before he was yanked into the shadows. His screams became wet, bubbling gurgles before silence. Lena didn't stop. She ran until her legs burned, until her lungs felt like they would burst. Then she tripped. Her face hit the ground hard, her nose shattering on impact. Dazed, she pushed herself up, and he was there. The Harvest Man stood over her, his mask now slick with fresh blood. His chest rose and fell in deep, wheezing breaths. Then, slowly, deliberately, he raised his hand and plunged his fingers into her stomach. The pain was indescribable. Lena screamed as his fingers dug through her flesh, twisting inside her like wriggling worms. Her vision blurred as he ripped out a handful of steaming entrails and shoved them into his gaping mouth. Her body convulsed, but she was still alive, still aware as he methodically pulled her apart, piece by piece. She tried to scream again, but all that came out was blood. Then, mercifully, darkness. By morning, the forest was silent again. The ground was slick with blood, the trees painted in gore. The remains of Jonah, David, Sam, and Lena were scattered across the clearing. Bones gnawed clean, organs strung up like grotesque decorations. The Harvest Man stood among them, his mask shifting as though grinning beneath it. He knelt, fingers dipping into the blood-soaked earth, and with slow, deliberate strokes, he began carving new names into the dirt. Names of those yet to come.